Managers, what's something your employees just don't seem to understand? When they're on Facebook or browsing the web, the natural reaction to someone approaching your desk is not a furious flurry of clicking and your eyes bulging. Edit. To clarify, I do agree with the majority. If you're getting your work done and aren't on obvious NSFW sites, I'm not going to give you a hard time about it. It's more entertaining to watch the panic.
I get the vibe. One time, I was just scrolling through memes at work when my boss showed up out of nowhere. My first instinct was to quickly switch tabs, but I fumbled my mouse and ended up on a video of a cat falling off a shelf. He just kinda laughed and walked away. It was awkward but funny. Just goes to show that sometimes, it's better to just chill.
Sometimes, we are just as mad as you are, and it's impossible to please everyone. I was a manager for a retail store, and the company decided to open Thanksgiving for the first time ever. This sucks. I was so mad. That is my favorite holiday. People flip shit on me. First off, I automatically have no chance of having it off because never in a million years would I not work that day, while others have too. My Thanksgiving is ruined too. Once I saw no one had any vacations put and centered around that day, I first asked for volunteers, and then I literally just picked names out of a hat. What nightmare. Everyone has a reason they have to be off. So-and-so has kids. So-and-so is going to college, and this is their last Thanksgiving home. So-and-so's great aunt is in town. Look, this fucking blows, and I'm so sorry, but I have no choice, so I did it randomly. That was a rant. We are people too. Half the time we agree with you, but what choice do we have?
It's frustrating when you're caught in the middle. I had a similar situation at work when they scheduled a last-minute shift that affected everyone's plans. I could feel the anger from my team, and honestly, I shared that frustration. All I could do was assign shifts randomly, which didn't ease anyone's pain. People just want their time off respected, but sometimes you have to make decisions that don't please anyone. It's a tough spot to be in.
That I have a boss or bosses, and that I was once in your shoes. Most of my employees think that I never spent a day doing what they did, so I don't, can't, or won't understand how hard etc. the job is, but yeah. The reason I'm your boss is because I started out just like you. I know the struggle. I get the difficulties, and I'm here to help, and if you follow my instruction, my lead, you'll be more successful, which is what I want.
It's interesting to see how often people think their bosses haven't been in their shoes. I remember when I had my first job and thought the higher-ups were out of touch. But then my boss shared their story, and it clicked. They'd been through it all. It changed my perspective. Knowing they understood the grind made it easier to trust their guidance. Sometimes, experience shapes leadership more than we realize.
We're people too. We have lives away from work that might affect us from time to time. I got here by working my tail off. I know what it takes to put out 100% the whole time, and no, I don't expect it always. Sometimes we just need a few minutes alone. Sometimes non-physical work can be more taxing on a person than physical work. Don't assume we aren't doing anything. Don't say I don't care. Call me whatever behind my back, but don't accuse me of not caring. I want to see you succeed. It's best for you, and if you do.
I've had moments where people didn't see the effort behind the scenes. Like my friend who always seemed distant at work. We later found out he was dealing with personal stuff. It's easy to judge, but we don't know everyone's story. Sometimes, just a few minutes to recharge can make all the difference. At the end of the day, we all want to succeed, not just for ourselves, but to support each other.
Our role is a fuzzy one. Our responsibilities change regularly around our core function, as we tend to be the get things done group for our senior management team. So, I wish I could get more of them to understand that they should take a moment to understand the purpose of a task and fulfill it to the best of their ability in the spirit of what it's supposed to achieve, rather than just act like robots and output something that technically satisfies what's asked for, but doesn't have any thought behind it or complexity to it.
I get that. It's frustrating when people just go through the motions without really thinking about what they're doing. Sometimes, taking a moment to understand why a task matters can make all the difference. I've seen friends just focus on completing tasks, missing the bigger picture. It feels like you're just pushing buttons instead of really contributing. That's what makes a team better, not just ticking boxes.
It's funny because only very recently have I become responsible for somebody else at work. Up until this point, I have always been at the bottom of any hierarchy. I guess what I wish I could have told myself when I was a lowly pleb at the bottom is, your manager is a reasonable person. They're not from another planet. They're just you in a few years' time. They know more than you, so use them as a resource. Respect their position, respect their advice, and respect the help they give you. It'll make your job easier, and they'll probably like you more for it. Smiley face.
It's interesting how perspectives shift over time. I remember feeling overwhelmed starting out, thinking everyone above me had it all figured out. But as I've moved up, I see the same challenges still exist. It's true, being respectful and open to advice creates a better work environment. It's just a cycle of growth we all go through. You learn to appreciate what others bring to the table.
The safety rules are not there to annoy you, nor are they there because we think it's super funny if you wear a dumb-looking outfit all the time. They're there because we honestly, truly don't want you to get hurt or die. It's about 50% because we care about our fellow human beings and 50% because it's super expensive if you do get hurt. Adjust as needed for how much you like your boss. Likewise, if you have an easy solution to make your job safer, healthier, or less annoying, tell us. We'd much rather spend $500 on a higher table or better lighting than have you sick at home even half a day a month.
I remember a time at work when a friend ignored safety rules. He thought it was unnecessary and ended up getting hurt. It didn't just affect him, it cost the company money and made everyone worried. It showed us that those rules aren't just annoying. They're there for a reason. Now, whenever we have a safety meeting, he's the first to speak up about the importance of following them.
Keeping a seat warm and doing the tasks assigned will not get you promoted. It will just make it harder for you to be fired. You will not move up in the company unless you start thinking critically about your work and how to approach problems. We have a bunch of people proficient at completing tasks. We need people who think about why they're doing the task, how to do it better, and what other tasks could be done to help the company move forward. Additionally, you better figure out how to work with limited direction and vague instructions. It gets more vague every step of the way up to the top.
I had a friend who just did his job without questioning anything. He thought showing up was enough. One day, he got laid off while others who took initiative were promoted. He learned the hard way that just being there doesn't cut it. Thinking ahead and seeking improvement is what really matters. It's not just about keeping your seat warm. Now he advises others to be proactive instead of reactive.
What I do is not always a direct technical contribution, and I deeply value your direct technical contributions. At least do me the courtesy of believing the things I do to ensure we, say, keep getting a budget every year are equally valuable to the team instead of constantly dismissing them as nonsense.
I once worked on a project where my role was less about coding and more about managing resources. People often overlook that side. But when the budget got tight, my efforts became clear. It's easy to undervalue support roles until they're crucial. It taught me that every part of a team counts, even if it doesn't always seem important at first. You need a balance for things to run smoothly.
Is my job to make you look good? If it's your job to make me look good? It's easy for me to go into a meeting and talk you up about how well you're doing and how you're finished things on time, gone above and beyond, etc. That in turn makes me look competent and good at my job. It's a team effort. When you do things that make you look bad, it makes me look bad. And it's harder to explain things to my bosses about my team.
It's interesting how workplace dynamics work. You rely on each other to build a good image. When one person shines, it helps everyone. But if someone drops the ball, it affects the whole team. I've seen it happen where one person's mistake impacts the whole group. Kind of makes you think about accountability and how important it is to support one another. It's really all about collaboration at the end of the day.
If you don't request your day off early enough, we probably can't make it happen seriously. Just last week I got a call from Jay. His shift started at 4, and he called in at 3:30 saying he couldn't make it because of a family reunion. I asked him when he found out about it. Jay knew about it more than a week ahead, but didn't ask because he thought I'd get off anyway. I told him fine, but not to expect a job next week.
That sounds like a classic case of poor planning. I once had a friend pull something similar. He thought he could just wing it and ask for time off last minute. Didn't work out for him either. It's one of those things where you think people will understand, but it just creates more problems. In the end, it usually hurts your credibility at work. Better to be upfront next time.
You have no idea how much responsibility I have. This is specific to retail management. My dad liked to use a juggling analogy. A cashier working retail has at most 2 to 3 balls in the air at one time. An hourly worker who works the sales floor might have 5. A zone supervisor maybe has 8 to 10. These are basically daily tasks of stocking or moving items, helping customers, some sort of company initiative to push an item or service, maybe a scheduling issue, a bit of training or coaching. An assistant store manager has 40 to 60 balls in the air at once. The whole store manager has 80 to 120. So, yes, sometimes I need to sit in the office while you do your thing on the sales floor.
I get it. Retail management is like that constant balancing act. You really have to keep track of everything, every day. Watching my friend manage a store was eye-opening. She handled complaints, sales goals, and staff issues all at once. There were times I just wondered how she didn't lose it, honestly. It's a lot more than what people see when they walk in the store.
I want my employees to succeed, and I realize this job is just a way for them to reach their goals. If you want to interview with another department or go work for another company, just tell me and I will help you get there. As long as you give me 100% while working for me, I'll give 100% back to you in any way I can. It's hard as a manager to gain that trust.
That's a solid approach. Supporting your employees' goals builds a good connection. Trust can take time, but being open like that creates a positive environment. If they know you're on their side, they'll likely give their best effort. It's cool to see managers who genuinely care about their team's future. Balancing that with business needs is tricky, but it's worth it in the long run.
If you don't want to do something, tell me, so I'm not scrambling at the last second. Don't want to work your shift? Tell me, so yet again, I'm not scrambling. 2 no-shows yesterday. Not feeling well and want to spend more time doing easy tasks? Yet again, tell me instead of disappearing for hours. Need more or less hours? Tell me, instead of complaining about working too little or too often. Giving me some heads up about things is always very important to me. There's always a simple solution if I have enough time, and employees almost always seem to forget that.
Yeah, I get it. Communication is key. I once had a coworker who would ghost during shifts, leaving the rest of us to cover. Just a simple heads up would have made things easier for everyone. It's frustrating when people assume things will just work out. If everyone just spoke up, we could solve problems way faster. It's not rocket science, but somehow it gets overlooked a lot.
That I'm not at liberty to discuss all of the meetings I've had with my bosses with them. Whenever I have to hand down an unpopular directive, There are a few employees who always question why I'm not taking that memo, going to my boss's office, and standing up for them. Thing is, by the time I'm handing out the memo, I've already had those conversations with my boss. Sometimes I lost. Sometimes it was actually much worse, and the thing they're complaining about has actually been tamed. Sometimes they're blowing a reasonable request out of proportion. But in all cases, I have been advocating for them. I just can't share all of those discussions.
I get this. Sometimes, you just can't explain everything you're dealing with at work. People see the surface and assume the worst. It's tough when you have to play the middleman, but you know you've done your part behind the scenes. Sometimes it feels like you're caught in the crossfire, but all you can do is keep doing your best and hope they understand in time.
Rules at work are there to make things run smoothly for everyone. Just because you find it irksome to show up on time and follow a few simple instructions doesn't mean you get to cause stress for your coworkers and a lesser experience for your customers. Also, I know the boss above me. I worked with him for years, and when I brought you on, I explained the particular pet peeves you should be careful of to maintain a harmonious working environment. These are not difficult things, just punctuality and grooming and adhering to the conditions of your contract. I'm so tired of employees acting like the contract or my instructions are suggestions. I fight for you with the higher-ups, so do me a favor and do your job as designated, or you're wasting my time.
I once had a coworker who thought rules didn't apply to them. Always late and never followed simple instructions. It made things stressful for everyone else. I had to talk to them and remind them how important it is to stick to the basics. They didn't take it seriously, and eventually, it affected their standing at work. It's true, being part of a team means respecting the rules set for everyone.
I don't ask you to do anything I haven't done or won't do. I give very little compared to what I had to do, so I expect it to be done. Not giving excuses as to why it's not done. Especially since I can clearly see you use your phone all day on camera. I have what I think is a fair policy. If you get all your work done, go ahead and goof off. Just don't let customers see you on your phone.
Sounds like someone has clear expectations. It's relatable when you put in the effort but see others taking it easy. I've been in a similar spot, where I had to remind friends that if they want to chill later, they need to finish their tasks first. Setting boundaries helps keep things fair, and I guess it's all about maintaining balance between work and having a good time.
1. When you say you were running late because insert excuse here and are holding a full Starbucks cup, I see that your morning coffee run was more important than being on time. 2. You think I don't notice when you're hungover or call in sick on Mondays or after events/holidays where people usually party too hard. The major booze hounds are easy to pick out, not a good thing. 3. I know when you lie about 99% of the time, but usually there's an HR reason why I can't call you out on it, or I'm just too damn tired to open that can of worms or pick that battle. We see/know more than you think.
I had a friend who always claimed they were late because of traffic. It was funny because they always showed up with a coffee, like that mattered. And then there were the Mondays after we partied. They'd either say they were sick or just look really rough. It was obvious. Most of the time, I'd let it slide, but sometimes I'd think, really, we know what's up.
You are not irreplaceable. You are not indispensable. When I come to talk to you about attitude, work ethic, or absence, it is about your performance, not bills, and the conversation isn't about me either. You also likely have zero real understanding of the other 99% of the business that doesn't include you.
It's true, we can all get a bit too comfortable in our roles. I remember a time when a friend thought they were essential to a group project. When they stepped back, things ran smoother than expected. It was a wake-up call for them. They learned that everyone has a part to play, and the bigger picture often goes beyond just one person. It's a good reminder to stay humble and keep learning.
I was a manager in a very small call center. 10 desks in the room, and we took up just about every inch of space. Some of the older employees would commonly complain that it was noisy in there. Yes, it's noisy in a room with 10 people carrying on a conversation all at once. That's how sound works.
That makes sense. I used to work in a small office like that. Everyone was just trying to get their work done, but the noise was always a distraction. It was weird how some people couldn't handle the sound. You'd think they'd get used to it after a while. Maybe they just liked the drama of complaining. In the end, it was just part of the job.
Tell your manager what you're doing. That way, they know what you're up to, so that if they have to report to their managers, they have a good idea of what's going on. Also, if you get performance evaluated, your manager knows what you're doing. Doing work and not telling your manager is as good as not doing it.
I remember back when I started a new job. I was focused on hitting my deadlines but kept it all to myself. One day, my manager asked how things were going, and I just said fine. Later, I realized they had no clue about my progress. So, I started sharing updates regularly. It made a difference. Communication helped my manager see my work and support me better. It was a simple lesson in transparency.
Recently, a staff member asked me why they do not receive a bonus for 100% attendance. As in, if you have no days off sick, you get a cash bonus. It took me 4 different ways to explain that the business pays them a salary to turn up to work and do a job. We pay them a bonus if they exceed our expectations or go above and beyond for a customer. There is literally no incentive for us to pay a further bonus just because they were good enough to show up and do the job that they're paid for. The staff member is one of those who will talk about they are underpaid for the work that they do, how they are paid below the market rate for this industry, how they could earn almost as much if they went to work in a coffee shop and did 1 extra shift per week, but never, ever leaves.
It's funny how some people can't see the bigger picture. I once had a friend who complained constantly about their pay. They'd compare it to other jobs, saying they'd get paid better somewhere else. But they never left. It's like they wanted more for doing the bare minimum. I had to explain that showing up doesn't deserve a bonus. That's just part of the job. Still, they never got it. Just stuck around.
I'm not your mother, I'm your manager, and there is a difference. I always make sure that if there are scheduled changes or things you need to know, I'll make sure you know as soon as I do. I don't keep telling you these things because I want to make your life miserable or difficult. I'm telling you these things because you need to know them. If you weren't listening and then blame me for not knowing, that's on you, and you need to own up to that.
This reminds me of a time when I was working on a group project in school. Our teacher laid out the plan clearly, but some teammates didn't pay attention. When things went sideways, they tried to blame the teacher. It was frustrating to watch. Communication is key, and if you miss it, you can't just point fingers later. You have to take responsibility for your part. It's simple but important.
That you, the employee, see one side of the equation, not the whole problem. Yes, come to me with your complaints and ideas. I will always listen and evaluate them. But if I don't implement them, it doesn't mean that I ignored you. It just means that it doesn't work for the large picture. And no, I'm not always going to go into details why. The financials of different departments are none of your business. I'm a general manager for an automotive group and have 17 managers beneath me in charge of various departments at 3 locations.
Managing a team like that can be tough. I had a friend who was a middle manager. He'd often bring ideas to the higher-ups, but they didn't always get implemented. He once told me that sometimes things just don't align with the bigger picture. He learned to accept that not everything is within his control. It's a reminder to focus on what you can influence, not just what you want to change.
that simply having a good attitude and being reliable, attendance/punctuality, will get you promoted, get you a raise, get you a bonus above any other factors. Employees who are negative, don't do more than the basic job duties, and cause problems by being late or absent are the first to go on my team.
I had a coworker who always showed up on time and had a positive vibe. Even when things got tough, they just kept pushing through. While others expected recognition for extra effort, this person just did their job well. Eventually, management noticed and gave them a promotion. It was a clear reminder that attitude and consistency often outweigh everything else. Those who slacked off, they didn't last long.
I work in a department store. My company recently changed how they give hours to each department. So naturally, in my low-volume department, where the 2 employees I have never been properly trained and are always trying to do the bare minimum to get by, we have a lot less hours to work with. At first, I responded by cutting my own hours to help make up their hours, but I had to stop because they were protesting the hour cut by not working during their shift. They don't seem to understand that if our sales go up, our hours will too.
I used to work in a store with a similar vibe. The staff was just coasting, doing the least they could. I tried to motivate them, but some didn't get it. I ended up picking up extra shifts to keep things running. Eventually, I just let them be. If they didn't care about the hours, it was on them. Sometimes, you can't make people see the bigger picture.
It's okay to tell the customer that you are busy and will get to them in a couple minutes. It's not okay to ignore them until you can help them. A simple 3-second hi, I'm name, and I will be with you in a couple minutes is all it takes to appease people so they don't go apeshit and want to talk to me. It's like people new to the workforce are afraid to give any bad news, even if it will end up being better in the long run. Don't be afraid to engage. It will save everyone from the heartache of an angry customer. Nothing bugs them more than being ignored.
I remember when I started my first job. There was a customer waiting, and I was swamped. Instead of just letting them sit there, I said, "Hey, I'll be with you in a few. Thanks for waiting." It changed the whole vibe. They went from annoyed to chill. Just letting them know I was there made a big difference. It's wild how simple communication can diffuse tension like that.
Minimum lunch break required is 30 minutes, not 29. Employees usually bring their lunch and don't want to take full 30 minutes as mandated. Clocking back in that 1 minute earlier means they get a few more dollars, but I have to document that they're taking the mandatory minimum of 30 minutes. They're allowed longer than 30, but are required to be away from their workstations for at least 30. Drives me crazy. We spoil our staff with so many perks, but they still want to take advantage.
It's interesting how people still try to cut corners, even with a decent lunch break. I know a few folks who would rush back just to gain that extra dollar. I guess it's tempting when you think about it. But then again, it leaves you wondering if a little more downtime would actually help them focus better at work. The perks are nice, but some just can't appreciate them.
You should never have to feel afraid to tell me if there's slash or a family emergency, problems at the workplace, suggestions you might have, where you outright feel like a can of shit, physically or emotionally, and subsequently need to call out for work. I don't care if I have to wash dishes or serve tables myself to sub in for you or anyone else. A bad day is a bad day, and everyone has their share. It's feigning sickness or lying that ultimately disappoints me.
I remember a time when a friend was going through a rough patch. They felt overwhelmed at work and didn't know how to ask for help. I told them it's okay to be honest about their struggles, and I'd cover their shift if needed. It's just part of being supportive, you know? They ended up opening up, and it made a big difference in how they felt. We all go through tough times.
I work in an office job, just like you, and I know full well that everyone wants time off around Christmas, Thanksgiving, and New Year's. I get it, I want that time off too. But here's the thing, executive management wants the office open and a few people need to be here. Sorry, I don't have the power to close the office myself, and nothing I schedule is going to satisfy everyone. So please don't, send me your holiday vacation request in February hoping I'll approve you first and get indignant when I don't share your stellar foresight, or B, take no time off in a year hoping you'll be able to block off that entire period and feel betrayed when I can't accommodate because I somehow don't appreciate how hard you work and dedicated you are since you don't ask me for much yada yada yada.
I get that holiday time is important. I once had a coworker who tried to book off 2 weeks around Christmas in June. It was kind of amusing to see the disappointment when I told them it's first come, first served. They assumed their past dedication would guarantee them a spot. It's tough trying to manage expectations when everyone wants the same thing, but that's just how it goes in the office.
You weren't hired as a favor to you. You were hired because you were needed to do a certain job. When you don't do that job, the company suffers. It doesn't matter if you're a corporate executive for a Fortune 500 company or a cashier at a convenience store. Your work is important and it is valuable. Similarly, the value you add to the company is the entire reason you get paid, and the amount of value you add is reflected by how much you're paid. I know there are some exceptions to this, Walmart, but for the majority of the time, this is true.
That makes sense. I've seen this play out in various jobs. At one point, I was working as a temp, and they really needed someone to handle a project. When I slacked off, everything fell behind. It was a wake-up call to realize my role mattered, regardless of the pay. Everyone's contribution shapes the bigger picture, and not doing your part affects more than just you. It's about responsibility at the end of the day.
How to prioritize. I don't get what's so hard about that. I understand sometimes I give several urgent or important tasks, so I will explain which is most important. But give someone an important task and meaningless one, they always do the meaningless one first. I could understand if the meaningless one was easier or more enjoyable, but it usually isn't.
I get what you mean. I had a friend who faced the same issue at work. He'd set priorities but noticed his teammates often picked the less significant tasks first. It baffled him. Turns out, a lot of people just gravitate toward what's familiar or seems less daunting. He eventually started having one-on-one chats to clarify why some tasks mattered more. It helped, but still was a struggle for some to shift their mindset.
While it may appear we aren't doing anything or running around not helping, we actually are doing all the other things we have to do every day. Payroll, scheduling, forecasting, looking at sales data and trends among our local stores, looking at how much we throw out every day and how to make it less while still offering the best selection to the customers, filling in the holes from people calling off, checking over and verifying our temperature log from the day before, and coming up with viable explanations as to what went wrong when it does, ordering inventory, dealing with customers here, customers on the phone, fielding calls, and questions from other departments or stores. Granted, this could just be unique to my situation, since I'm in the food service industry.
It sounds familiar. I've worked in restaurants too. Everyone thinks it's just about serving food, but there's a lot behind the scenes. Dealing with orders, inventory checks, customer complaints, and trying to minimize waste can be overwhelming. You handle it all while keeping things running smoothly. It's easy to overlook the hard work that goes into managing everything, especially in food service, where the stress can pile up quickly.
Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.